Okay, you are unmuted. Let's just do a sound check. Don Galligan, can you confirm for us whether or not you can pass?
Yeah, what is it you want me to confirm?
That's all I needed. Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
All right, everybody, this is Jackson Fox with Fast Planning. We have quorum at this time, so I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is the Fast Planning Technical Committee meeting. It is Wednesday, March 1st and 12:01 p.m. For introductions of technical committee members that I see present, I see we have with us today Randy Bailey sitting in for Judy Chapman, Bob Christash, Bill Rogers, John Natardis sitting in for Sarah Shocker, Kellen Spillman, RJ Stump, Jacob Toyrick, and Danny Wallace. Technical committee members that I see absent at this time include Justin Burgess, Nick Zarnecki, Michelle Denton, Kate Duber, Kevin McKinley, Lieutenant Mike Roberts, and John Weinberger. So any of those technical committee members are online. Please unmute yourself and let us know that you're here to meet.
Yeah, this is Adiemi Alimi. I'm sitting in for Nick.
Wonderful. Welcome, Yemi. Thank you for joining us. Okay, so we have 9 technical committee members again, which makes quorum. For other folks in the meeting here, for Fast Planning staff, we have myself, Jackson Fox, Olivia Lunsford, and Deborah Todd. Online guests, I see that we have Don Galligan and Jack Barnwell and Peter Stern. And for those folks that are in the room, I'm going to have you introduce yourselves just real briefly. We'll start down at the end of this line here.
I'm Megan Flory.
Nathan Stevens, DOT.
I'm Golden DOT.
Brad St. Pierre, General Valley Farmers Market.
All right, welcome everybody. So that's who we have with us today. Let's move on. For technical committee members, move on to the approval of the March 1st, 2023 meeting agenda. Do I have a motion on the agenda?
Move, or Bill Rogers.
Thank you, Bill. Is there a second?
Second, this is Yemi, DEC.
Thank you, Yemi. All right, any changes to today's agenda? Hearing none, anyone opposed to approval of the agenda as presented? Hearing none, we'll consider it approved. And that takes us to approval of the February 1st, 2023 meeting minutes, which are found on pages 2 through 8 of the packet. Do I have a motion on the minutes? All right, John Natardis.
Want to change one word?
Hold on.
Okay.
Let's get a motion on the table. No worries. All right, so John, are you making a motion to approve the minutes?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second? Second. All right, second by Jacob. All right, now edits. You got one, John?
Yeah, the very bottom left of page 6, the word high should be,
Page 6 of the packet or 6 of the minute?
it's 6 on the bottom.
Oh, my shocker didn't want the bids to come in high. She wanted them to come in low.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. That's a good edit. Any other edits to the minutes? Good catch. All right, hearing no other edits. Anyone opposed to approval of the February 1st meeting minutes as edited? All right, hearing none, we'll consider those approved. And that takes us to committee and working group reports, which begins on page 9. Just a couple highlights for the technical committee, what happened at our last policy board meeting. There were 2 action items at the policy board meeting. One was in relation to the comment letter to the EPA and the partial disapproval of the state implementation plan for air quality. They did make one edit to that letter and did authorize me to sign that letter and submit it to the EPA. That letter was also copied to our congressional delegation in DC, as well as our interior delegation at the state legislature level. In addition to that, they did approve the scope of services for the long and short range transit plan and coordinated human services transportation plan. So that scope of services has now been sent to DOT to put into a request for proposals to be issued by the state to begin looking for a consultant to assist us with that work. And for the record, Kevin McKinley has joined us. All right, behind those action items just includes a copy of our final comment letter to the EPA on pages 10 through 17. You can see on page 17 the list of individuals that this letter was sent to in addition to the EPA. Then also on page 18, we included the flyer for the public hearing that the EPA is holding in Fairbanks on the partial disapproval of this air plan. That public hearing will be held on March 7th up at UAF in the Wood Center from 2 to 8 p.m. So if you have interest in providing testimony on that partial disapproval of the air plan, this would be an opportunity to provide testimony directly to the EPA. I believe the limit on testimony per person is going to be 3 minutes, but there are a lot of folks that are signing up for this opportunity. And then next, my last update is on page 19 to show you the action items from the Bike and Ped Advisory Committee meeting, which was held last week. They do have a letter of support for House Bill number 8 related to electric bicycles. That letter, I am advancing it through the Technical Committee and Policy Board this month for final approval. And that will be a new business item today on agenda item 8C for you all to take a look at and advance to the Policy Board. And that concludes my committee and working group reports. Are there any questions on those updates? Yeah, Kellen, go ahead.
One question, maybe you know the answer, maybe Mr. Alimi knows the answer. The Borough Assembly authored a resolution last week on the PM 2.5 SIP disapproval as well. Do we know when the DEC is going to be completed with their comments?
I'll defer to Yemi. I do not know the answer to that.
Yeah, this is Yemi. We are currently working on putting together the comments. Very soon, we should be, turning in our comments very soon.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone, so let's move on to our public comment period. Is there any member of the public that wishes to provide testimony today on anything not listed as an action item? If you are here for the College Road crosswalk discussion, that testimony will be held underneath item 8B, but any public comments today on anything not listed as an action item on the agenda? If you have any comments, please go ahead and unmute yourself, state your name for the record, and you can proceed with your testimony. All right, public comment going once. David, I see that you unmuted yourself. Did you have public comment for today's meeting?
Actually, I have some interest in all the items that I saw on the agenda. And so I think at this point, I would like to listen, and I would appreciate an opportunity at the end to make some brief comments if that's allowable.
Okay, we'll consider that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, David. All right, any other public comment? All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead and close the public comment period. And move on to old business, item 7A, call for project nominations for congestion mitigation and air quality and carbon reduction program. This begins on page 17 in your packet. So to provide you all an update, we did have an open call for project nominations for our, what we call our CMAQ and our carbon reduction program funds. That was held from January 16th through February 17th. As of February 17th, we received a total of 28 project nominations to fast planning for this program, which, as you all are aware, is focused on transportation projects that improve air quality in the Fairbanks and North Pole area. We have compiled those applications and loaded them to a web page on the Fast Planning website and distributed them to DOT to perform an eligibility review in coordination with the Federal Highway Administration Alaska Division Office. Those applications have also been transmitted to our third-party consultants, Trinity Consultants, which will perform the emission benefit calculations in each of those projects nominated. And then just before the start of this meeting, I emailed out that webpage link, as well as a link to a survey for technical committee members to complete their scoring of each of these projects. And so just as a reminder, technical committee members are responsible for scoring the project nominations submitted to Fast Planning. And Livia in our office has put together a survey 1, 2, 3 that goes through each of the scoring criteria, such that you can open up each of the nominations and then fill out a quick survey to score those projects, and it'll populate into an Excel spreadsheet for us on our side. So we're asking that you complete your scoring of those projects by by March 17th. So you basically have just over 2 weeks to complete your scoring, and your scoring would be due March 17th, which is a Friday. After all of those scores are turned into our office, we'll begin development of a funding plan. That funding plan will be based on the highest scoring to the lowest scoring projects, as far as putting them into priority order for funding over the years. I do expect, with 28 projects nominated to us, this will result in a backlog of about 10 years worth of projects for this program. So we'll put together a funding plan showing how these will be funded. These will be funded over time, and then present that funding plan to the technical committee and policy board during your April meetings for any changes, amendments, and ultimate approval of that funding plan. But I believe, Olivia, you had opened up the webpage to show everybody. So we have a single PDF for each of the project nominations on the webpage, but then also on the bottom of the webpage, you can also just download a zip file, which with all of these PDFs included in one folder. So however you want to download or look at these applications, there's a couple different ways that you can do that. And then again, Olivia put together a survey 1, 2, 3 form so that you can score each one of these. I believe that the survey form has about 12 or so pages on the survey form, but going through it is actually relatively quick. So it should be less cumbersome than previous scoring efforts where we sent you all an Excel file and put your scores into. So you're just put your name at the top, select your project, and then work through the questions, which are all directly related to the answer boxes in the nomination form. All right, so that was my update for this program. Are there any questions? I'm not hearing any or seeing any online, so I guess we'll go ahead and move on to our first action item of today, which is item 7B, the 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan Air Quality Conformity Analysis. And again, this is an action item and it begins on page 23. And we did present this draft plan to the technical committee last month, so I won't be going over the plan content in detail, but I will provide you an overview of the process here. Again, with our 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan, we are required by regulation to do a regional emissions analysis on that group of projects, which would be constructed in our area over the next 20 years. And we had a third-party consultant perform that emissions analysis and provide us a report which compares the total expected vehicle emissions over time, over that 20-year planning horizon, and compares those against the emission budgets that are set within the state implementation plan for air quality for our area. So that this report was advertised for public review for 30 days from January 22nd to February 21st. We also, on the next page, oh, you're there now. We also held an interagency consultation meeting where we directly invited all of our federal, state, and local partners to receive a presentation on the findings of this analysis and ask questions and provide feedback on that analysis. And so that included members from the Federal Highway Administration, Federal Transit Administration, state DOT, the borough, as well as the Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation. And that meeting was held on February 8th. The notes from that meeting are on pages 25 and 25, 26, and 27 in your packet. And so during the public comment period and during this meeting, we only received a total of 4 comments on the air quality plan, which are found on page 28. And all 4 comments were from the Federal Highway Administration. Lee Osterling, and as you can see here on this page, Federal Highway simply asked us to include a map comparing the MPO or our boundary with the PM 2.5 non-attainment area boundary and the carbon monoxide maintenance area boundary. They also asked on our project list to identify the projects in our 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan that were outside of our boundary, but within the PM 2.5 non-attainment area boundary. This area is referred to as the donut area. So we have identified those now on the project list. We have also marked which projects on the project list are what we consider regionally significant and non-exempt projects from air quality conformity review. So these comments have been addressed by our third-party consultant, and we will have a revised final version with these changes made for the policy board on March 15th. But on pages 29 through 64, this includes a copy of the draft report. The revisions I just mentioned have not yet been made into this report, but again, will be made, and we will have a revised final version before the policy board meeting. And just a kind of reminder to everybody on the findings of this report. It's summarized on page 62 of the packet within the report. As you can see, for calculations of the emissions from vehicles over that 20-year planning horizon at different analysis years, those vehicle emissions have been modeled to be well below what the emission budgets are for our area for both PM 2.5 pollutants as well as nitrogen oxide pollutants. And also just a reminder that this air quality conformity analysis did include the anticipated additional trucks on our roadway through the PM 2.59 attainment area from the Kinross ore hauling operation, which we expect to occur beginning in 2024 and wrap up in 2028. And those additional trucks through our non-attainment area result in a 2% increase for PM 2.5 emissions and an 8% increase for nitrogen oxide emissions. But again, even with those emission additions, we're still below the emission budgets that are set for our area by the EPA. And page 65 shows what I just described there in kind of graphic format. So you can see that on the very bottom, our latest test results are in yellow at the bottom of that graph, showing that this emission analysis models our vehicle emissions over that 20-year planning horizon to be below both the moderate air plan budget as well as the proposed serious air plan budget for our area for these emissions. So the action item here today is I'm looking for a recommendation from the technical committee to approve this air quality conformity analysis. But before I call for a motion, at this time, I'd like to see if there's any questions on this draft analysis.
Are you taking questions from the public?
We will after I take questions from technical committee members. So
Great.
we'll open up a public comment opportunity here in a moment.
Okay.
All right, so technical committee members, any questions on the draft analysis? Yes, Kellen.
Yeah, my only question, it's a very, very dense analysis. I did see was kind of a separate analysis on the Kinross ore hauling operations. And my reading of that is it's extremely minimal in terms of the pollutants go. Would that be a fair assessment of that analysis for the
I
Kinross
wouldn't say it's
project?
extremely minimal, but yes, it's relatively an insignificant addition, yeah, to our vehicle emissions in our area.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from technical committee members? Okay, I'm not seeing any.
Hi, this is,
So-
hey, this is Danny Wallace.
Yeah, Danny, go ahead.
Hey, Jackson, and just to be clear, this is only talking about the air quality and not the actual trucking plan, correct?
Correct. This is the projected vehicle emissions from all vehicles on our transportation network in Fairbanks North Pole, including the Kinross trucks. But yes, it's just an air quality conformity analysis.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, now is the opportunity for any public comment on this item. So, David, you have the floor.
Yeah, okay, so I would like to start with a question, just an information question. And then I would like to share a couple reflections on the analysis. The information question is, when the segment of the study was done on the contribution of ore haul trucks to air pollution, what number of trucks on the road making what number of trips per day were used?
Okay, I'm going to read from the report here. So for the planned trucking activity from the Kinross ore hauling operation, the assumptions were 192 round trips per day, operating 7 days a week throughout the year, so 365 days a year, with double trailer truck configurations, 120 feet long, weighing up to 80 tons each. And the hauling operation would last for 4 to 5 years, beginning in 2024. And it was modeled using the route that's preferred at this time by DOT, which would be along the Richardson west to along Richardson, and then Mitchell Expressway west to Pega Road, then north on Pega Road, then east on the Johansson Expressway, and then north again on the Steese Highway. So, and we do understand from Kinross that they are now projecting fewer trucks on the road than 192 round trips per day. But we did use what we consider the worst case scenario for the Kinross trucks, meaning the max number of trucks and the longest truck configuration that was provided over a year ago by Kinross. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that was good. I appreciate that very much. So my understanding at this point is that in order for the trucks to be legal, their length has been set at 95 feet. The number of trucks has varied during the year that I have been involved as an advocate against the ore haul, from 70 a day down to 30 a day. So I'm not surprised that you that you are still wondering what the numbers are going to be. So that's one piece of information that I'd like to share with you. I think if you look at the most recent Kinross trucking site, you'll find the dimensions. You can also find the dimensions of the truck on the ASA site. The truck is shown in considerable detail there, including its length and so forth. So my question, a couple of reflections I have. Spokespeople for Kinross have made it very clear that there are multiple proven gold ore sites in every direction of the compass from the Fort Knox mine. they've made it very clear that they want to develop those sites and they want to use the Fort Knox mine mill to mill ore from all of those sites. That means that this is not a 4 to 5 year project. The first thing I want to say about that is that an independent geologist has looked at the Tetlin ore body, and in his opinion, that mine is on its way to being a world-class mine with a possible life of 30 to 50 years because of the size and the quality of the ore. So the 4 to 5 years to me, to not try to be trying to be offensive, but I think it's a flat out lie. And I think it's put there so that we don't have in our mind something we're going to have to live with for 30 to 50 years. But if you look at articles in Alaska Mining News, if you look at press releases, you will find that there is a 300-mile radius that includes many different mining companies. I think most of them are Canadian, but there are some others in there too. And they all want their industrial trucks to converge on the Kinross mine because that's where the biggest mill is, and they don't want to pay for another mill. And so you said you were planning 10 years out. And so my question is there seems to be no doubt in Kinross's mind that they are going to substantially increase the number of diesel burning trucks on the roads coming from many different directions to the Fort Knox mine. And I'm wondering, are you aware of any of that? Is it factored into any of your analyses? Can you relate it to any of your projects? I think what we're looking at, my vision, is that Fairbanks and North Pole are going to become depleted communities in the middle of an enormous mining camp with open pit mines, hard rock mines, poison pits, tailing piles, industrial haul roads, truck maintenance stations come all around us, coming from all directions, with a very, very large destruction of the pristine wilderness for which a lot of us live here. So my perspective from having been involved as an advocate against the ore haul and having access to a lot of documents is that there is a lot more to this 4 to 5 year thing than meets the eye.
All right, well, thank you for your David comments. Just to let you know on our side here at Fast Planning, we do believe that there might be additional trucking activity that occurs over time, similar to what Kinross is proposing, that this may, or even that the Kinross ore hauling operation may last more than the initial 4 to 5 years. At this time, though, we don't have any information from Kinross or other mines in the area of any proposals for trucking routes. So when we did this analysis, we only included the one that's known at this time. But for your benefit, David, this air quality conformity analysis that we do is required by regulation to be updated and new models prepared every 4 years. So as we learn about additional trucking operations in the future, there will be a point in time every 4 years that we will take another look at this to see if any additional trucking activity should be included in the model.
Okay, so I'm a little new to the committee structure and to the organizational structure. Does the Fast Planning Committee have any statutory power to say that's the limit, stop?
We do not. If our emission budgets are exceeded, the EPA, the Federal Highway Administration, the Federal Transit Administration can tell us stop. So we don't have any statutory authority to do that, but we do have federal oversight that if we are in a situation where we're not going to meet our emission budgets, that federal highways will require our local governments to take action.
Okay, so so I understand. So you're local and
Yes.
and you're local, you're in this area, this is you're in the North Pole Fairbanks area, you're in this particular region. Is there anything between you and the federal government at the state level that can say stop?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, we work very closely with the state DOT, especially on issues like this one here. But we do have a direct and separate link to the federal agencies than DOT does.
Okay, all
But
right. So your answer is no, there isn't.
not necessarily. The state has their own permitting processes that they go through and their own administrative code that they administer.
Oh, I see. Okay, so if the state decided they were against a certain part of a project or a project, they could not issue a permit, and that would in effect say stop.
Yes, in theory. Oh, Kellen, do you want to add something?
We're just getting a little off topic. I was hoping we'd get back to the conformity analysis. Sorry to interrupt.
Yes. No.
It's okay, I'm done. I said what I wanted
right.
to say. Thanks.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your comments and questions here today, David.
Yeah.
All right, any other public comment today on this item? Okay, I'm not hearing any, so we're going to go ahead and close the public comment period, and I'm now looking for a motion on the draft analysis. Is there any technical committee member that'd like to make a motion today?
Oh, this is Yemi from DEC. I move to
Yes.
approve.
Thank you, Yemi. Is there a second? Thank you, Jacob. All right, discussion on the draft analysis. Or any other questions from technical committee members? Go ahead, Kellen.
Just make one comment. This is a very, very dense document. I don't have a background in air quality modeling. It's hard for me to analyze everything in this. With that said, I do think it is concluded pretty well. It's on page 31 of the conformity analysis. That really states, according to all the modeling that was done by our consultant that we've used every time since we've been in PM 2.5 non-attainment area, the requirements of the transportation conformity rule have been satisfied. The finding of conformity for the new standard is in support of the MTP essentially. So I think it spells it out. There's been a lot of conversation about other transportation kind of activities going on within the MPO, but I think for the sake of our MTP, this is an accurate model, and I think we should go forward with it.
All right, thank you, Kellen. Any other comments, questions, or discussion? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so I'm going to go ahead and call roll on the motion to recommend to the policy board to approve the air quality conformity analysis. And we'll start with Randy.
Yes.
Yemi,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Kellen,
Yes.
RJ,
Yes.
Jacob,
Yes.
and Danny.
Yes.
All right, any other technical committee members that I may have missed? Okay, not hearing any, so that passes.
Jackson?
unanimous.
Jackson?
Yes?
This is Alan Hosa. I'm here in Bob's office. So, yes,
Wonderful, I didn't realize that.
It's
Well,
okay.
welcome, Alan.
I was
And what
over
is your
there,
vote
then I'm
now?
over here. All right, yes.
All right, I got your vote as yes. Okay, thank you. All right, that motion passes. Let's move on to item 8A. New business, the comment letter to the US EPA and reconsideration of national ambient air quality standards for particulate matter, which begins on page 66 in your packet. So as I stated at our last technical committee meeting, there is a second Federal Register notice that was published related to particulate matter pollution. This Federal Register notice was published 17 days after the Federal Register notice where the EPA was proposing to issue a partial approval and partial disapproval of the air plan for the Fairbanks PM 2.5 non-attainment area. So this this second Federal Register notice here relates to particulate matter standards on a nationwide level. So this is not specific to our area. This is a nationwide particulate matter standard. And comments on this are due by March 28th. Just kind of in brief, what this Federal Register notice is proposing is on the next page, page 77, where the EPA is proposing to revise the primary annual PM2.5 standard by lowering the level from 12 micrograms per cubic meter down to a range of 9 to 10 micrograms per cubic meter. And they're also taking comment on a proposal to retain the current primary 24-hour PM2.5 standard of 35 micrograms per cubic meter. So either retaining that or lowering that level as well down to 25 micrograms per cubic meter. And Yemi can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that we get air quality alerts when we get close to that 35 micrograms per cubic meter.
Correct.
So that should be somewhat of a familiar number to you all as you see air quality alerts that are issued for our area for PM 2.5. Again, these are health-based standards, but that's what they're taking feedback on this time on proposing to lower those. The EPA has provided a map, which is included on page 68 in your packet, on if these air pollution standards were lowered, what counties across the US would be affected. As you can see on this map in dark green, it shows the counties that currently do not meet or would not meet that proposed lower standard, as well as 62 additional counties that would not meet that standard. So there's a total of 112 counties that this lowering the PM 2.5 standard would potentially affect. And just to note that only 24 of those 112 counties are currently in non-attainment areas for PM 2.5. So we may have a large spike in non-attainment areas jump up all across the United States. So counties that would be in non-compliance with EPA's air standards and be designated as non-attainment areas for PM 2.5. As you know, we've been working on this issue for well over 10 years here locally and invested tens of millions of dollars into trying to resolve our air quality issues. So this is something that can be very costly for many communities all across the US. So page 69, I put together a very short one-page comment letter to the EPA. As you're aware, I recently wrote an 8-page comment letter on the Federal Register notice that directly affects our area. This is a nationwide, or this is a Federal Register notice with nationwide implications. So I kept my comments very brief, cross-referencing the previous letter that I submitted to the EPA last month on the other Federal Register notice. But just to point out how this would personally affect us, we consider these actions to be back-to-back actions on our community. Again, the two notices were issued only 17 days apart, and it makes the appearance to us that the EPA is doubling down on our community. And also noting that we are currently struggling to meet the current PM 2.5 standards, and by lowering them, it'll dig us a deeper hole to try to meet the new standards. So, in my opinion, it'll basically put us into a tailspin where it'll take us a decade or more to try to get out of this hole that's being dug by the EPA. So, and I do cite the map that was provided by them and stating that the EPA should weigh the severe economic impact of this decision. So I do understand that there's been more recent health studies which suggest a lower PM 2.5 standard would be more appropriate, a health-based standard more appropriate for communities across the US. But in this letter, I again just kind of made it a little bit more personal how it affects our area, and that just making the point that our comment is basically that the EPA maintain the current PM 2.5 standards and not lower them. And I do know that the National Association of NPOs, that organization is working on their comment letter as we speak, and they also intend to oppose lowering the PM 2.5 standard based on the economic impact to communities across the US. So this would be consistent with their comments, though that comment letter has not been finalized at this time. All right, I'm going to open it up for questions. Yeah, Kellen, go ahead.
Are you aware if our kind of federal delegation, senators and representative are aware and working on this as well?
Few are, most are not. So every chance I get when talking about the previous comment letter that we've submitted to the EPA, I mentioned this as well. And I have let everybody know that there will be a second letter coming out, and I'll get that in their hands. Okay. But it's something that we need to educate both our congressional delegation and interior delegation on this issue. So, because I think most people's focus right now is on the partial disapproval of the local air plan and not necessarily the secondary issue. All right, other questions? I see Kevin, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Jackson. My question is that out of those 112 other counties that would be affected, how many of them are in a similar situation of ours where it's not mainly tailpipe emissions, but wood smoke tends to be the primary problem?
I do not know the answer to that. I do know that our area is unique for PM 2.5 with wood smoke. I'm aware of a few counties in California where vehicle emissions are 40 to 50% of the problem, whereas for our community, it's only 6.8% of the contribution. Vehicles are. So, but no, I do not know how many of these other communities where wood stoves are the primary emission source.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions, so I'll open it up for public comment before we make a motion. Any member of the public would like to provide testimony on this comment letter today?
Jackson, could I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so this action by the EPA seems to me to be just kind of the proverbial double-edged sword. Of course, I want everybody to be breathing as clean air as possible. I've lived in New York City, in Los Angeles, and in Taipei, Taiwan, all of which have really, really bad air most of the time. And I've seen the health effects on people there, and I don't wish that on anybody. So I look at this and I say, okay, that edge of the sword looks really good to me. But on the other edge, it seems to be part of this current national administration's attempt to stop any use of any kind of fossil fuel, regardless of the fact that other sources of fuel for heating and cooking and transportation may not be easily or at all available. So I'm asking myself, all right, suppose that this happens. Do you have any idea what could be done in our area?
I have some ideas, but it doesn't relate to transportation, so I hesitate to put my opinions on the table for something that doesn't relate to transportation in this meeting format.
Okay, accepted.
Well, thank you for your comments, David. Appreciate that perspective.
Okay.
All right, any other public comment today on this comment letter? All right, I'm not seeing any. So we'll go ahead and close the public comment period. I'm now looking for a motion from a technical committee on the letter.
This is Yemi from DEC. I move to approve.
Thank you, Yemi. Is there a second?
Bill
Second,
Rogers,
Jacob.
second.
Jacob got it in person first, so we'll give it to him. So thank you. All right, Olivia, if you go back to page 69 real quick. All right, so we have a motion on the table to approve the letter. So any other comments, discussion, questions, or any suggested changes to the letter? Anything, everything's on the table, so. Kellen, go ahead.
Do you think there'd be any benefit in attaching the other much more in-depth letter that just went to EPA?
That'd probably be a good idea. We do reference it in the letter, and we even give the comment tracking number that the EPA uses. But I think there might actually be a benefit to simply provide that so that they don't have to go looking for it.
If I may continue.
Yeah. go ahead.
What I really like is in the first more in-depth letter where we cite all of the progress and projects we've been going through as a community. I think that, and just putting that on the record again, really kind of drives home, we are making progress, we are trying, we are putting funding into this. It's just a little bit tough when for lack of a better term, forgive my use of this phrase, the goalposts are moving.
Right.
So that would be my suggestion. I'd leave it up to you. I don't necessarily need to make a motion, but I like putting that on the record.
Okay. Is there any technical committee member opposed to simply attaching our first letter to the second letter for purposes of distribution? All right, I'm not seeing any. So, oh, Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, Jackson, this is Bill. Yeah, I was just gonna say, I agree with attaching it. I wouldn't change this letter. I like its brevity.
Okay.
But
All right, thank
attaching
you.
those attachments is pertinent and certainly a good idea.
Okay, I've made a note to attach that. Were there any other comments? Kellen, did you want me to insert the language and move in the goalpost, or do you think the letter's okay?
That was my term. I don't feel it appropriate for a formal letter.
Okay. All right, other comments, questions, or discussion on the letter? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to call roll. And we'll start out with Alan,
Yes.
Randy,
Yes.
Yemi,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Kellen,
Yes.
RJ,
Yes.
Jacob,
Yes.
and Danny.
Yeah, this is a,
Oh, John Weinberger, I see that you're on the line now. What's your vote?
Yeah, I'll vote abstain or present, however the recorder wants to document that.
Okay. We'll consider abstention for you. Sounds good. So the motion carries. All right. Okay, let's move on to item 8B, the College Road Crosswalk at Farmers Market. This is an action item here today. And for everybody's benefit, or I guess for everybody's context for this action item here today. At our last policy board meeting, we had a large turnout of members of the public that provided testimony in support of installation of the crosswalk on College Road. There was folks online, there was folks in person, as well as I received approximately 20 email written comments, which are to be shared with the policy board before their next meeting, and will be included in the meeting packet as well. As a result of the discussions with policy board members on crosswalk on College Road, the policy board chair asked me to include this on today's agenda. And the purpose of the action item is the policy board would like to know whether or not the rectangular rapid flashing beacon proposed with the crosswalk installation on College Road is, in quotes, safe enough for that crossing treatment, or if fast planning should consider providing additional funds for this project to enhance that crosswalk, meaning additional signage, additional lighting hanging over the roadway to bring folks' attention to the flashing beacon, or potentially upgrading it to a hawk signal like what we see on University Avenue, or formalizing that intersection with a traffic signal as opposed to just a mid-block crossing with that crosswalk. So that's what I was asked to go back to DOT to hear a presentation today on the current design, as well as any improvements or enhancements that are warranted for that design. And the hope is that we have a motion later after the presentation today that lets the policy board know that either the design as is good and move forward with that, or if the technical committee thinks that the design should be improved in one way or another, and that fast planning should consider adding additional funding to the project for those improvements. So that's the nature of this action item. So I'm going to start this out with a presentation by John Natardis and Nathan Stephen of DOT. We do have a PowerPoint, and they're going to walk you through the current design and potential upgrade options. And then we'll open it up for questions and then get to public comment after the presentation.
All right. John Natardis. The current RRFB, or rectangular rapid flashing beacon on College Road, is part of the fast area service upgrades FY 2023 project. There's a couple other.
One moment, John. I'm going to move the microphone closer to you. If you could speak up just a little bit, just so folks online.
Sure. Hear a little better. Yeah, the RRFB is part of the FAST 2023 project that's going to be constructed this summer, along with some improvements at the dog park and paving of Aztec service area roads. You can go to the next slide.
So, on this screen, hold on. There you go.
We're going to be installing the rectangular rapid flashing beacon at the east corner of College Road and Caribou Way to provide a safer crossing for the farmers market or the overflow parking, and just in general, north to south crossing of College Road, where there are not many marked or legitimate crossing locations. I think the next two are the next two lights east and west of there. So College Road is really long, and there's not many opportunities to cross the road safely north to south. So up on the screen is a picture of where the RRFBs will be located on this east side of the intersection or driveways here, and I'll have a ladder style crosswalk along with the signs with the flashing lights that are push button activated. You can go to the next slide. That's just a picture of kind of what they look like. Later on, we have an actual picture of the one on Airport Way West. That'll show you more what it looks like, but this is from our design plan drawings. What I wanted to say is that this fast planning project came up pretty fast. The priorities were chosen kind of late summer, and the College Road RRFB was added into the project pretty late in the game, but we were able to design it, get it in there, and we'll be able to construct it this summer. The cost of the RFB is relatively cheaper and we can afford it right now. The cost of the other options that were presented, like a hawk or a traffic signal and any other improvements are way greater. So a hawk is about 7 times more expensive, if not more, because we have to do more research and activities during our design phase, like drilling for the foundation and ordering more specialized parts for the hawk. So, and then more studies as well for traffic turning movements, and pedestrian movements. But we can go to the next slide, and I'll have the real brains of traffic and safety. I'm talk a little bit about some of the justifications for the RRFB. So Nathan, Stephen, or Pam.
So I'm not Nathan. I'm Pam Golden. I had Nathan's job until very recently, and so I've had the history of this. And I told him I'd come lend a hand. So on College Road, we have a permanent counter down here by what is now True North Church, was an old UAF building. We have counts at the Aurora intersection, and we have some pedestrian counts that FAST takes every year in their bike ped count program. They are most likely taken on Wednesday. I think we figured out Wednesday is not the biggest day for the market. Saturday is, so we don't actually have Saturday counts. So we're doing a little bit of interpolating with the data that we have. The farmer's market now, there's people already parking where the future overflow parking officially might be. And so if you're out there on a Wednesday at lunchtime, or you're out there on a Saturday and the parking lot is full, you will see people making a crossing in this location, pushing strollers and walking grandma across. And so we feel pretty confident that the crosswalk itself is warranted. So when we start looking at the tiers of things we do, is it warranted to mark a crosswalk here? We feel very confident that yes, it is. So then we look at, well, this is a 4-lane road, and we don't like crosswalks on 4-lane roads unless they've got some enhancements with them. So this is where we get to the RRFB. So when you go to the Alaska Traffic Manual and you step through what to do here, there's 6 or 7 different things you check off for an RRFB, and this meets every one of those. So I don't know what's actually in the presentation because I was out of town until yesterday. So let's go to the next slide and see what we've got.
Okay.
Okay, this is the permanent counter that's down there at True North Church. So again, we're looking at more of a seasonal issue. Yes, this crosswalk is going to be there on College Road year round, but when you look at when the primary use will be, it's May to September, Wednesdays and Saturdays. Everybody can use a crosswalk at any time, but those are our primary times. So I can't read this. I will fully admit that, but it's like 700 and some in like the noon hour, kind of just as an average. That's vehicles on College Road. So let's see what's next.
Checking the warrant for pedestrian,
Oh, for just
because the traffic signal was.
oh, okay, so, okay,
More
going
than
full bore to the
Yeah.
traffic signal. There is a pedestrian warrant for traffic signal. Sorry, I just had to get clued into what we were talking about. It's a really high threshold. We are not going to meet the pedestrian warrant for a traffic signal. I don't think we'll meet the vehicular warrant for a traffic signal either. So I think we can't get there. If we want to use federal money, we don't meet warrants. That's a really high bar. So I think the next ones are like graphs that go with this.
Yes.
So this is still the traffic. This is a full-on traffic signal. So now this is the Hawk. So the pedestrian hybrid beacon, which is what's at Sandvik Street on University. We don't know if we meet the warrants for Hawk. I'm just going to be honest. We don't have counts at the market during the busiest times. And this is my professional opinion on this. I think a Hawk might be overkill for a 2-day-a-week seasonal issue. We'd have to purchase right away. I know that because we can make an RFB work within the very confined right of way that exists on College Road today. The Hawk, as John was saying, we've got to drill the foundations. There's just a lot more space that's needed for that type of thing. And the cost is like 7 times greater, right? So given that we have other potential programs, this is just, I'm sorry, I don't know what I'm supposed to talk about. So you're getting the Pam Golden special. The RFB is a great solution to start with. If the RFB does not prove to be safe enough, as some people are concerned about, we do have the Highway Safety Improvement Program that we could come back with. I'm thinking, just if I was being asked this question by our director, the RFB we can get put in this summer, the solution happens now. We have to go to a Hawk. We are waiting. We are having to acquire right of way. We are kicking this can down the road a few more years. So that's, we could get numbers to look at a Hawk. We'd have to take them this summer. We'd have to take them on a Saturday. So we'd have to get turning movements of vehicles. We'd have to get pedestrians crossing College Road. We'd have to hope it's not raining. There's kind of not during the fair. There's kind of all kinds of things that have to factor into this. So is it possible a Hawk is warranted? Yes. Is it likely the most cost-effective solution for the issue at hand? I don't believe it is. I don't know what else is up there. Oh, this is the Hawk. So the Hawk threshold is a lot slower. So that's
Sorry.
the Hawk, no, that's the one at University. And I think the next slide is probably the RFP out at the airport that just got turned on in like December. So RFPs do have up to a 98% yield rate.
Yeah, it's on
Oh.
the next slide. Yes,
Okay. You want to?
second bullet point.
Okay. So I guess y'all can read.
Yeah, I guess I would say that there, you see the RFP up top and then the hybrid beacon down below or the Hawk, and they both reduce crashes. But it seems like, the Hawk might not reduce as many, or it will reduce more, but that marginal gain is not worth the time and effort and money that would be needed to put in to get it out there. It would take 1, 2, maybe even 3 years to get it out there when we have a solution that we can get out there this summer. So for the committee and everyone, my recommendation is we go with this kind of low cost solution that would have a very, it would be successful, or it'd be a lot more than what's out there, which is absolutely nothing. And then we'll have a spot where we can do a real count for pedestrians. We'll have more data. We can determine if it's safe enough, and then go from there. But I think putting it off and trying to find the money and waiting 2 to 3 years for, like Pam said, right-of-way acquisitions and whatnot, will leave it in a state where it's not safe for longer.
One question, roughly what was the AVT couch? About 10,000.
7,200 for
Down at the,
Hayes, yeah,
down at True North.
yeah.
But you guys don't have.
That's
tubes
our
that are
only
closer to
permanent counter. So we have turning movements that roar, but not segment counts.
And that's more of the data we'd have to pick up as well.
Right, gotcha. Okay. All right, so what I heard is your opinion at this time is to stick with the rectangular rapid flashing beacon.
Get it out on the street this summer, make things safer, and then determine, is it working well enough? And it probably will be.
And yeah, as I said, we could always look to the HSIP program if we need to go from an RFB to a Hawk at a later date.
Okay. Kellen, go ahead.
I have a question. Pam, we've talked a little bit about this, just so I understand correctly. So the RRFB went out there and someone actually engages that and it starts blinking. The yield rate to that is 98% higher than if just a sign is stuck in the road.
Yes,
It can be, yeah.
that's up to that, right? I think it's a Florida study, but so, and I do understand the concerns. We are kind of on that cusp between an RFB and a Hawk when we start looking at the speed of the road, the volume of the road. It's just my professional opinion as former traffic and safety engineer is this can happen now. And I'd hate to not do something that we could do now that we could afford.
All right, we got a couple questions online. We'll do Kevin first and then Bill after Kevin. So.
Yeah, thank you, Jackson. My question is, are the speed limits similar to where the Hawk is off of Sandvik compared to where the RFP is off of Airport?
I believe they're both 40 miles an hour. And I believe the speed limit at the airport, the new one,
45.
is 45. It's right before the speed change. So the new one out at the crossing, like if you're leaving the airport going over to the hotel area.
Thank you.
All right, Bill, you're up.
Mine was a speed limit question also. Would it be wise in conjunction with this to lower the speed limit to 35 if it isn't already? I know it goes from 35 to 40 and back to 35 someplace, but I don't
I knew
remember.
that was coming. I knew that was coming. We actually have speed studies from College Road. They're dated at this point, but even at 40, we're not getting great compliance. So lowering to 35 just makes more lawbreakers. Yeah, it's. I think most people who are familiar with the area when they approach the farmer's market in particular, I know that the crosswalk is 24/7, 365. But at least during the market days, everybody expects some congestion there. This just helps highlight the fact that folks are also crossing in this area. And also, it's gonna jump out on College Road. There's just nothing like this out there on College Road. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere. So if somebody is trying to make a wintertime crossing, that those rapid flash beacons do certainly pop. It's getting all 4 lanes to stop for you as you're trying to cross. But at least it's been noticed that something is going on here and in that area, there's just nothing else like this.
All right, thanks, Pam. Let's get so we'll go ahead, Kellen, and then we'll get back to Kevin and Bob. Kevin may still have his hand up from earlier. Go ahead, Kellen.
I was actually hoping I could ask either Bob or Mr. Rogers a question.
Sure, go ahead.
If I remember right, the first 2 RRFBs we put in as an organization were about 10 years ago, both on Calvin Street, one at the library and one at Chief Andrew Reisnick. I think those are both city streets. Is the city aware of any pedestrian vehicle crashes at those locations since the beacons have been installed?
Jackson, this is Bob. No, Kellen, I'm not aware, but I mean, I don't remember all the crashes at both of those locations. We could check that though with dispatch or somebody. We could check that. Maybe Pam has that information, but I don't have it right now.
Okay,
Go ahead, Kellen.
just a follow-up, Bob, if I may. What's your opinion on those RFBs on Cowles that they've been in for about 10 years? Do you think they're working okay?
Well, as far as maintenance of them, they don't seem to be any problem at all. You know, operationally, I'm really not an expert on that, but I've seen people run them. And then they're, you know, those roads are nothing like College Road, of course. Jackson, be all right if I ask my question now then?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, you know, Pam, you know, the Hawk is warranted, but we don't know, I mean, not the Hawk, but the flashing beacon, the yellow is warranted, but we don't know if a red light is warranted yet. There seems like there would be some kind of more liability or danger if we put up a Hawk now and then we did find out, or if we put up an RFB now, a yellow light, and then we found out a Hawk was really warranted and then there was an accident. I can see, you know, that being a question if something did happen. How do you, when you thought about that, what were you thinking?
So warrants in general don't mean that you're required to do anything. Warrants are just kind of the minimum threshold at which you can make a decision to do something. It's not a thou shalt do this situation. Not meeting warrants is, you know, also a thou shalt not do this problem. You know, we can certainly look at the crash data as Kellen was asking, because I think there's 3 on Cowles. The university has a couple now. The one on Airport Way is too new.
Wilbur in second.
Yeah, Wilbur. So they're becoming more common. So I think drivers are knowing what to expect at them. But keeping in mind that, you know, the red light being regulatory, vehicle crashes tend to go up when you put something in that forces a stop. Whereas when you're in a warning condition, it's a little bit less likely that you're going to introduce a vehicle collision where a vehicle collision didn't occur. Again, going back to the primary time these will be activated by pedestrians are during the market. And so you've got a lot of congestion going around anyway. I still think if we were asked at this point and we put in an RFB, we are making the conditions safer in the short term. we can still go out and get the data to see if the next step really needs to be the pedestrian hybrid beacon or Hawk. And then we pursue alternate funding for that. It's never, I mean, I'm not gonna say it'll never fit in the FAST budget, but it's a big lift for the FAST overall budget. So it's not as big of a lift if we did it through the Highway Safety Improvement Program. And what we can do today as the Band-Aid perhaps to the future still seems like the smarter decision, even if we find out we did meet minimum thresholds for Hawk. Part of the other complication to that, which isn't, complication is not the right word, but when the farmer's market purchases the lot and it becomes official parking, we might see an increase in crossings. So we don't know what that number would be. And right now we're just kind of interpolating a lot of data that we have that isn't site specific. So
there's no increased danger of installing the beacon when a Hawk is warranted.
no, the one I would never do is to mark a crosswalk and do nothing else.
All right,
So-
thank you.
Kevin, just checking to see if your hand up was from earlier or if you have a new question.
Yes, I have a new question, Jackson.
Go
Earlier,
ahead.
when you were talking about the RFP, you mentioned there was some improvements that could be done to the system. What would those be?
I'm
That's
gonna,
you.
Oh, I probably misspoke. The RRFB is a sign with a light that blinks when activated, and we put a painted crosswalk on the street.
I think what he was asking is what I stated in my introduction. So, ideas that came up in talking to our policy board chair was suspending a yellow flashing light in the middle of the roadway so that the flashing light was even more visible to drivers in those center two lanes. So adding an arm with a sign out in the middle, reflective sign, or a flashing thing in the middle as well as the two things on the periphery, is that possible?
So I believe you can do an RRFB as an overhead device. We're back into the right of way challenge if we do that, because any sort of pole and mast arm is gonna have to be behind the sidewalk. So actually I can think of RFBs in Idaho from before I moved up here that had they had them on the side and then they also had them overhead. So I think that is a possibility. I would make sure that the understanding is clear that that would be the PED activated, because anything that is always the same is just training us to ignore it. So when you think about like a beacon, like we have up at the Fox intersection, that's always just saying, hey, you're approaching an intersection, just remember that, as opposed to stop looking for things. So we are very complacent as drivers when we don't see something to command our attention. That's why the RFB is so much more effective than the old bouncing ball, is because bouncing balls are everywhere and that flash pattern is very unique. So this is going to enhance the conspicuity of that crossing. Is it perfect? No. Is it better than what's out there? Absolutely.
All right, any other questions before we go to public comment? Not seeing any. Thank you, Pam, John, Nathan. Appreciate the information. There might be some questions a little bit later here, but I would like to open up this for public comment at this time. And we have one moment, David. We've got Brad with the farmer's market in the room here that want to provide comment, and I'll get to you second. So go ahead, Brad.
Thanks, Jackson, and thanks for the presentation. So the farmer's market believes that it is more important to have this project done as quickly as possible than to go looking for more funding for a larger. I do think that would be something that we'd like to see going forward, is studies of those pedestrian crossing. I do agree that once we do put in parking across the street that's official parking, it's probably going to increase the amount of traffic. So it would be a good thing, I think, to look for those numbers after this. But we'd like to see something there this year. And it's a problem. 4 years ago, we had a gentleman hit crossing the road right there. We're just trying to avoid any more incidents. And we think, though, maybe it's not the perfect answer, it's a way better situation than what's there right now. And also right now, we've had the opportunity to purchase this property has come up. We were planning on leasing, but that's a time sensitive thing. And for the market to decide to purchase the property, it's pretty critical on that decision that this crosswalk goes in. Because the last thing we want to do is increase pedestrian traffic without anything there. And so at farmer's market would like the project to go continue as it is right now. And then if in the future it doesn't seem like it's the safest option, that we adapt. But we'd like to see something new this summer.
All right. Thank you, Brad. All right, you're up next, David. Go ahead.
Okay, so I want to say, I think that putting something in there is a really excellent idea. First, in the last, I would say 5 years, I have seen more and more people exceeding the speed limits on all the roads in Fairbanks. Second, I've seen more and more people, some percentage of their attention, which is being taken up by cell phones or other talkie-looky devices inside the car and not on the road. And third, I do drive College Road pretty often. And one of the things that seems to me to happen there is that people habituate to the traffic signals, and I think there would be a positive habituation to some kind of warning there. And I would include a really big vote for both the side flashing lights and the overhanging light of the road. And that means they could miss either the ones on the side, but if they're the one on each side and one of them hanging in the middle, it's probably going to catch the attention of almost every driver. And I also really agree with taking the first step this year and seeing how it works. And if it's good enough, it's good enough. If it's not good enough, that's a later discussion and a later action.
All right. Thank you for your comments, David.
Okay.
All right. Any other public comments today on the side? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so we'll go ahead and close the public comment period. We are now looking for a motion from the technical committee, which would be a recommendation to the policy board on the current design or any design alternatives for this crosswalk location. Anybody would like to make a motion? Kellen, go ahead.
I'll make a motion for discussion purposes to recommend to the policy committee to continue with the fast improvement program with the RRFB in the design at the College Road and Farmers Market location.
Okay, is there a second to that? Second. Second by Jacob. All right, discussion on that motion. Yeah, go ahead, Kellen.
It's been a couple of years and I'm sure Pam remembers a lot of our discussions. One thing that's always bothered me quite a bit is the term pedestrian warrants. And we fought as an organization a lot to get mid-block crossings on a number of roads in the Fairbanks area, in the Fast area. College Road probably being the number one. If you remember, we did a College Road corridor study in 2014. And I think we recommended 3 mid-block crossings in that. Coincidentally enough, none of them are the ones we're talking about today. At other locations, it was really that Beaver Sports Hot Licks end that we had most of the mid-block crossings recommended, and really the need there. And we're struggling to meet those crossing warrants. So in looking at all the other RRFBs we have in the community, I think they're working very well. Reading the national statistics and hearing 98% yield rate, I think really adds to the case. But my big justification, I think, really comes to cost and right-of-way acquisition. If, according to Mr. Natardis, it's 7 times the cost, we could do 7 more mid-block crossings in this community with the funds that would go into, I guess, 1 Cadillac treatment of this. I'd rather see it implemented elsewhere. Mostly those other crossings at College Road, the ones we talked quite a bit about, had a nominated project at Farmers Loop and Army Road. I think we really need mid-block crossings in this community. I really commend DOT for taking the first step with this one. I think from everything I've heard and read, this is a huge improvement, and I'd like to see others in the community.
All right, thank you, Kellen. Other comments, questions, or discussion on the motion? Go ahead, John.
I guess that it did come up, well, a lot of people mentioned they would want to see continued study. I don't know if that needs to be added. So to do it this year, put the RRFB in as per plan, get it in this year, get it operational, but also to maybe be sure to follow up on it later on and do our counts that we should be doing.
Are you making a motion to, or are you making an amendment to add the study to the motion?
Yes, but I don't have the eloquent words for it.
I'll make them up.
Okay.
All right, so John is making a motion to add the study to this project following installation. Pam?
I know it doesn't really count for that, but it would have to be in 24, because in 2024 that counts because of just timing of installation.
Okay, sounds good. So that is an amendment on the floor. Is there a second to the amendment?
Second.
All right, second by Jacob. All right, discussion on the amendment. Hey, Kellen, go ahead.
Does this complicate so we have a current project that's expected to go into construction this year, right? Is adding a study onto a current capital project complicate that project?
That would, I wouldn't want to study as part of the project. I'd rather it just be some sort of promise to remind ourselves to go back and do a future effort.
So maybe to clarify in this amendment that basically we'd be asking DOT to perform a study following installation beginning in 2024. So we would not be committing to funding that study. We can talk about that later, but we're basically asking DOT to follow through on study. Is that?
Yes, that's what.
Okay, so as long as you concur with that, John, and then the second, Jacob, do you concur with that? Yeah. We'll include that as part of the language of the amendment. Okay, further discussion on the amendment. All right, I'm not seeing any further discussion on the amendment, so let's call roll on the amendment before we get back to the main motion. We'll start with Alan.
Yes.
Randy,
Yes.
Yemi,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
John Natardis,
Yes.
Kellen,
Yes.
RJ. May have lost. No, RJ's still there, but he may have stepped away. RJ? Not seeing him. We'll skip over him for now. Jacob,
Yes.
Danny,
Yes.
and John Weinberger.
Yes.
Okay, one last chance for RJ. All right, I'm not seeing him unmute himself, so in any event, that amendment carries. So we're back to the amended motion, which is more or less to recommend to the policy board that we continue with the fast improvement program with the rectangular rapid flashing beacon included in the design for the College Road crosswalk, and to ask DOT to perform a study of that or data collection effort for that crosswalk beginning in 2024. So that is the amended motion. Any further discussion on the amended motion? Right, Kellen.
Last discussion regarding the study. I'd be happy to work with DOT on that and have our transportation planner work with DOT. I'd like to see if some of the western end areas that really came to light in that College Road corridor study are now meeting warrants or close to warrants, but I think these mid-block crossings are huge improvements on College Road where sometimes you have to walk a half mile to legally cross the road.
All right, only count.
Thanks.
Randy, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I just want to clarify, when we say study, I'm a little unclear. When we say study, are we just trying to collect data at this specific intersection as far as, you know, once it's put in turning movement and, you know, as far as rework, whether it's warranted for a hawk, or are we trying to put in a full out study of, you know, like a bigger, like Kellen kind of mentioned, are we looking at all of College Road, or are we specifically trying to pull some data after this is just to verify that we have done, you know, made the right decision and we don't need to move forward with a hawk through HSIP, et cetera?
So John can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is this would be a data collection effort.
Okay.
So, and likely the data to be collected would be, you know, number of crossings per day, per hour, you know, of folks utilizing that, possibly even a compliance rate or yield rate for vehicle stop in the intersection. I mean, it might be appropriate to install a camera near the location so that those counts can be accurately performed, as well as the yield rate be accurately determined. So, but my understanding would be a data collection effort, not that could be done in-house and not necessarily rely on a consultant effort or any other type of formal study. So is that correct, John, or is that?
That is my intention, just data collection, make sure we're recording any pedestrian vehicle crashes, maybe roll out a tube to count the traffic. Have a person sit there, do the turn movements. Or
All camera.
Oh, or
It's
all
all
camera.
recorded and then it's the Mio Vision. So you set the cameras up to record the day and then they're
Awesome.
counted off of that.
Even better, so just data collection, not a formal study, none of that, just making sure, just to follow up and monitor.
Okay, thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you. That was my understanding too. I just wanted to make it clear that it was more of a data collection rather than a study, because that could be interpreted very differently. So thank you.
Thank you.
I will use those words in John's amended motion when I write it up. Okay. Other comments or questions from technical committee members before I call roll on the amended motion? All right, not seeing any. So let's go ahead and call roll on the amended motion. We'll start out with Alan.
Yes.
Randy,
Yes.
Yemi,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
John Atardis,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
RJ,
Yes.
Jacob,
Yes.
Danny,
Yes.
and John Weinberg.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Motion passes. All right, let's move on to our last action item for today, which is item 8C, House Bill number 8, an act relating to electric assisted bicycles. This begins on page 70 in your packet. Included in your packet here is a draft letter of support from the from Fast Finance Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. It's just a simple two-page letter supporting House Bill number 8 and not requesting any revisions to House Bill number 8, which is currently going through the House at this time and will later move on to the Senate. We do have a copy of the House bill included in the packet beginning on page 72, but the cliff notes of House Bill number 8 is simply putting in Alaska statute a definition for electric bicycles and considering electric bicycles as or defining electric bicycles as bicycles and not as motor vehicles, despite the fact that they do have a motor fixed to that bicycle. So again, this defines electronic bicycles or e-bikes as bicycles, not motor vehicles. It also waives the registration for e-bikes since they are not motor vehicles. And then this House bill also defines the 3 classes of e-bikes that are currently being manufactured and sold throughout the US. This 3-class system of defining e-bikes is consistent with legislation in 37 other states. There's a few other states that have e-bike legislation that does not include the three classes. But I will note that 46 of our 50 states in America have passed e-bike legislation. We are one of 4 states left to pass e-bike legislation. And one of the reasons, if you go to page, yeah, there you go. Page 71 of the packet, one of the reasons it's important to define the 3 different classes of e-bikes in your legislation is that class 1 and class 2 e-bikes generally are governed to not provide any power assist great when you're traveling at 20 miles per hour. So basically those are limited to going 20 miles per hour, but class 3 e-bikes are governed up to 28 miles per hour. And there is, some discussion and some other regulatory defining language that that gets local governments as well as states into conversations about whether or not some of these higher class e-bikes, if they're traveling 28 miles per hour, whether that's appropriate to have them on a multi-use path on a sidewalk or a path that they're sharing with other bikes and other pedestrians. And so this House bill just defines the 3-class system, but does not provide any further regulatory definition as to what to do with that 3rd class of e-bikes. And it basically leaves it up to local municipalities and different state departments to weigh that in the future. Again, the copy of the House bill is in the packet beginning on page 72. This is just a letter of support for the House bill. I don't consider it controversial. I don't expect really any objections to it today. But I thought it was an important topic to bring forward for educational purposes through the technical committee and policy board to approve the letter before we have our bike and ped committee chair sign it and we send it into the state legislature. So I'll stop there and see if there's any questions on this letter of support. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. Is there any public comment on this item today?
Yeah, I would just, I would just say, I think it's a really good start.
All right, thank you, David.
Yep.
Any other public comment?
Hey, Jackson, my computer, this is Kevin, my computer kind of blipped out in the middle of when you were talking. So were you talking about comments from the technical committee about the e-bikes?
Not yet, not till we get a motion on the table. I'm just asking if there's any questions about the support letter or the bill itself at this time. If you have any questions.
Thanks, Jackson. Sorry for the technical problem.
No worries. Okay, and is there any other public comment on this item today? All right, I'm not seeing any, so let's go ahead and call for a motion from a technical committee member. Looking for a motion on approval of the letter. All right, motion made by Jacob. You made a motion.
Second by Yemi from DEC.
All right, thank you, Yemi. Okay, we have a motion on the table now. Any comments, questions, discussion, or suggestions for changes to the letter? Go ahead, Kevin.
Yes, I guess my question with the different classifications, would that be for like certain classes couldn't be on, for an example, like mixed trails or certain areas? And if that's the case, then how would that be governed? Like, who would enforce that?
So yeah, the intent of splitting them into 3 different classes is for potential regulatory actions. And there's different state and local governments that might be interested in, passing ordinances or creating new laws and administrative code on how to deal with the different classes. So yeah, an example could be the Department of Natural Resources within state parks. Class 3 bikes are not allowed to be operated at at speeds in excess of 20 miles per hour. That could also be for a municipality like the city of Fairbanks. They could pass an ordinance saying that class 1 and 2 bikes or e-bikes can share multi-use paths and sidewalks, just like a regular bicycle would, but class 3 bikes are, they can use those facilities, but not in speeds in excess of 20 miles per hour. It gets a little bit fuzzy as to how you would actually enforce that. It also, you can think to yourself, well, let's put a speed limit on our bike paths around town. And that also seems a little bit funny as to how you would actually enforce that. So it basically leaves the quandary to, again, other state departments and municipalities that if that becomes a problem, they at least can call them out in statute as far as this category of bike is not appropriate for this particular facility. But the bill does not define that other than the 3 classes. It leaves it up to the state and local governments to decide what they want to do later.
I have
Okay,
another question. If nobody has one.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Hypothetically, if we decided not to approve this, hypothetically, wouldn't we still have to figure out how to give access to e-bikes because they would deserve access to our trails in some manner, correct?
I think they're being used currently on our paths and on trails, kind of on a statewide basis. But if you look at, but there is no definition in statute right now for e-bikes. And so since they have a motor on them, I think they would default to motor-driven cycles.
Jackson, I guess, but my question was is if this was not approved, would e-bikes, would they lose access to trails?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay.
I'm not familiar enough with the issue at hand is that that e-bikes aren't defined anywhere. So, you know, how would the state troopers or say Fairbanks City Police handle an e-bike on a roadway? They might be able to subjectively say, well, that's a bicycle and you can be there. Or they might say that has a motor on it and you have to get off of that path. They have to kind of use what they have on the books at this time, since they're not further defined. So I don't know how that would actually play out, but obviously they are currently being used on a statewide basis.
Thank you, Jackson.
Yep. All right, other comments, questions, or discussion?
Jackson, just for the record, I have a clarifying question / comment.
Go ahead.
So Kevin just used the use of the word trails, and I just thought it would be important for the record that we're talking about House Bill number 8, which is specifically for infrastructure created for non-motorized use, like a shared use path versus like the trail system that's throughout the borough, correct? Or would it?
I don't believe the House bill relates to just, I think it relates to all facilities.
All facilities, okay.
Yep. So even this would be helpful to the Alaska Department of Natural Resources, which manages our state parks as well.
Okay, yeah.
Go ahead, John.
The bicycle committee recommended this to the technical board, and we're recommending it to the next one, policy.
Yeah, so
They've looked at this in depth already.
the Bike and Ped Committee has looked at this in depth, yes.
Okay.
And so it's just going up the chain, up to the policy board for March 15th. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Not seeing any, so we'll go ahead and call a roll. We'll start out with Alan.
Yes.
Randy,
Yes.
Yemi,
Yes.
and I see Andrew Gallagher, you're on the line for Kate Duber.
Yes.
Thank you. Kevin,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
John and Tars,
Yes.
Kellen,
Yes.
RJ,
Yes.
Jacob,
Yes.
Danny,
Yes.
and John Weinberg.
Yes.
All right, thank you, everybody. Motion passes. We don't have any other issues today, so we'll move on to informational items, which is just our obligations and offsets, which begin on page 77. There have been no new project obligations over the past month. This is shown on pages 77 and 78. But I will note on page 79, for offsets, our balance is now 0. Since at our last meeting, the technical committee spent all of our money on our latest round of project increases. So we do not have any offsets at this time. And then page 80 shows the latest project closures list. Any questions on obligations and offsets? Okay, I'm not seeing any. So we'll move on to committee member comments. Is there any committee member comments today? Go ahead, Kellen.
I had a comment, maybe a question. The discussion on e-bikes reminded me about a year and a half ago. We spent a lot of time working on an Alaska administrative code change for bicycles, mostly as they pertain, one, to the regulations, but two, as they pertain to the use of sharrows. As far as I know, we hadn't heard anything back after we submitted our comment letter. Are you aware of the status, or can we get an update in the future of what's
Yeah,
going
so
on?
we turned that in, it would have been last March or April, into the Department of Public Safety. And so I have in writing from Commissioner Cockrell that he would advance that for public review, and he supported the regulation change. That was not put out for public comment as a proposed regulation change during the summer. He stated he was waiting for legislative session to end. And then once legislative session that concluded, I asked him again if he was moving that forward, and on 3 different occasions, and not got a direct response. My feeling is that it was not supported by the administration above it. But at this time, it is something that is not moved forward, even though the Department of Public Safety Commissioner supports it. Yep, go ahead.
Could we have a future agenda item, maybe next meeting, to formally ask for another update on that?
Yes.
I think it's important. I think we put a lot of work into it, and I don't want it to go by the wayside.
All right, I got it. Thank you. Thank you, Kellen. Any other committee member comments? John, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm sitting in for Sarah Shocker. She's our pre-construction engineer, and she is leaving DOT on Friday. I just wanted to say, I think she really enjoyed being on the technical committee. And so that's all I have to say, is she appreciates being on it and getting to be a part of the fast planning community. And while I don't know who's going to replace her yet, the new pre-construction engineer will have a temporary one. So until that person's hired, but I may or may not be here in future months. But I'd love to, continue filling in when possible. And just appreciate Sarah and what she's done for this committee and, DOT as well.
Yeah. Ditto. Thank you, John. Yemi, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Yemi from DC. I just want to remind everyone that, especially those who are interested in submitting the comments to the EPA on the partial disapproval of the PM 2.5 CRC, to do so before the deadline. The deadline is March 22nd, please.
Thank you for that reminder, Yemi. All right, other committee member comments? Okay, not seeing any. I guess I'm now looking for a motion to adjourn. John Natardis is making a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Jacob? Any opposed? All right, seeing none, we are adjourned at 1:45 PM. Thank you, everybody, for your attendance and participation today.
You too.